Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Facebook chat. We will be hosting these sessions every Friday at 10 a.m. to discuss some of the common themes caregivers are experiencing through this pandemic. Today, we will be spending about 20 to 30 minutes on the topic of getting a diagnosis. We will reply in the comment sections to any questions that are asked, as today's session is not live streaming. My name is Miranda, and I am one of the Society's registered social workers.
Hi, I'm Cindy Bond, Community Education Specialist. Thank you for joining us today. So one of the reasons, Miranda, we're going to talk about getting a diagnosis is it's one of the most common questions, even at this time, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we are still getting referrals from some of the what's called the Seniors Health Clinic, where they do the diagnosing. And so we're still getting referrals for people who have been recently diagnosed. So it's still happening throughout the pandemic.
Yes. So I know initially when we went into isolation, people were not necessarily thinking they could see their physician, and certainly can, or have that virtual consultation as with them as well. So we won't spend a lot of time on that because we touched on it, but let's talk about best case scenario, and then we're going to move the conversation to worst case scenario. So best scenario referring to your person has insight and you can have a conversation about concerns.
Absolutely.
Are there.
Right. So I'd like to start just by touching on some of the reasons why we're advocates for getting a diagnosis, just so that everyone understands those reasonings. So really, a diagnosis for dementia is, what they're really doing is they're eliminating other possible causes that may be treatable, right? So those are things like depression, medication interactions, medications themselves, thyroid malfunctions, vitamin B12 deficiencies, delirium infections, things of that nature that can present as dementia, but are really treatable.
Right.
Other treatable reasons why those symptoms are being seen by the family or by the person.
I think it's important for viewers to know that they can contact regardless of whether or not there's a diagnosis. You can call and talk about suspicions. And it's never our go-to, is it, Miranda? It's never, we don't diagnose, number one, but we have to eliminate those possible causes for what you might be seeing as a care provider, right? Or a person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does happen.
Issues.
Absolutely. It does happen, right? We'll get calls sometimes talking to talk about how to get a diagnosis. And we'll suggest ruling out these other possible causes. And sometimes that's what's happening, right? And it's a reversible situation.
Which is great. Yeah.
Which
stories.
Is ideal. Yes.
Yeah.
So in the best case scenario, though, like you said, a person who you suspect to have dementia or some sort of cognitive impairment, best case scenario is they have some insight to those changes, or are at least willing to kind of go through the process of seeing their doctor upon family suggestion, right? So.
Sorry, I just wanted to highlight again, just because there's so much fear and stigma around Alzheimer's and other types of dementia that people are automatically assuming that's got to be it. And it's not necessarily true, right? You can't worry about the potential if you don't have the facts, I guess, is really important. So something that with your person, if you're supporting your person, or you yourself recognize changes, that you have to eliminate the possibility that something else is going on. So that often, it's been my experience talking to people that their anxiety kind of goes, oh, so it could be something else? And I go, yes, something treatable. So, okay, so it takes the sting out of going to the doctor.
Absolutely.
Conversation.
Right. Well, and it's also, sometimes caregivers just need to know, right, that they're not just seeing things They're not making this stuff up, right? That there are changes, and it can really answer that question as to why. Why is this happening? It's also a really great way to understand the disease process, right? When you know what's going on, you can do the research, ask the questions, and maybe have a better sense of how things will progress.
For sure. I think that's so important. So we do advocate, as Miranda said, for getting a diagnosis so you know what's normal and what's not. And even if possible, finding out what kind of dementia. So Alzheimer's is the most common, but there are over 50 different kinds out there. So knowing what's normal for your person, right? So for example, maybe I don't have memory issues, but I'm living out my dreams, or I'm having problems sleeping. There's other things going on. So, that's not Alzheimer's type of dementia. That could potentially, and there's more to it than what I just said, but those
Sure.
characteristics or symptoms could be Lewy body. So like Miranda said, recognizing, okay, what is Lewy body dementia? What is going to be normal for my person? Where, what are the red flags to that? When do I need to see a specialist? Right away when I see my person doing X, Y, and Z kind of thing.
Right. Well, and that's a really good point there, Cindy. And I would encourage caregivers to be recording that information, recording the changes that you're seeing in the person. And I'm not saying you have to journal 5 pages every night. It could be 10:05, mom asked a question 10 times in the last hour, right?
Yeah.
So it's just recording those changes, which will really help you when you're talking to a doctor, right? So in the best case scenario, your person is willing to go to the doctor and try and get this investigated, right? If appropriate, of course, talk to them about it, gently bring up the changes that you're seeing. You're the expert on your person, right? So you're going to know what's most appropriate. For some people, it might be okay to say, Mom, I'm noticing these things. I'm wondering if there's dementia or something else going on. I'd like to get that checked. For other people, that might be a real trigger word, right? And it's just saying, hey, here's what I've noticed. Let's get it checked out.
Yeah.
And then from there.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, we both have a lot to say today, apparently.
We do.
So from there, it's booking an appointment with the GP, the family doctor, and maybe going together if that's your family dynamic. That way you both have some support, and talking to the doctor about some of those changes, right? And if the doctor is recognizing that there is a concern, from there it might look like the doctor taking a personal and medical history, maybe doing some cognitive testing. So the two we most often hear about is an MMSE or a MOCA. And they're just some basic cognitive tests. They're certainly not
diagnostic.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not going to be able to give you a diagnosis based on just that. It's really just to give the doctor some ideas. Okay, are there concerns here or not? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of going to, we have the signs and symptoms as well, but I really like what Alzheimer's Canada has done. It's the pictures of possible warning signs of dementia. And it gives examples and it's pictures, but taking that with you, I really like. I like the journal idea as well. But taking the picture, flipping it over on the back and writing very clear examples of, the different warning signs that are on the other side. So it kind of it gives the doctor the facts, which is what the doctor needs. That's the information they need. The doctor also needs to hear from the caregiver that this is not normal for my person.
Right.
something's going on. So really stressing, yes, there's changes, and these are examples of the changes that I'm seeing.
Right.
That's really important for the doctor to have that information.
Absolutely. It's also really good to have it for yourself as well, because going into that appointment, there's going to be a lot of feelings that are involved, and it may be hard to remember specific examples when your emotions are maybe you're scared or anxious, and you're also trying to provide comfort and support to the person, right? So that's a lot going on in one appointment. So make sure that you bring that in and you're prepared with what details you want to give. Right. And along with taking notes, take notes during the appointment, right? It's sometimes hard to recall what was said exactly, or
asking the doctor, can you write that down, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Because they all have computers now, right?
Yeah, most of them absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes,
so give me a copy of those notes of what we discussed today, or what's important for me to remember, or next steps. What are my next steps?
Right. So from there, and again, this is the typical process as we hear it. It may look different from one family to the next. Sure. But typically from there, the doctor, if they've noticed some concerns based on the details that you're providing them and the cognitive testing that they may do, it may be that they're sending for blood work to rule out things like B12 deficiencies, vitamin B12 deficiencies, and even CT scans and MRIs. From there, all of that information will be collected and will be sent to what's called a seniors health clinic. So that's Bridgeland, Rocky View, and South Health Campus here in Calgary, or a neurosciences clinic here in Calgary. Typically, that's for people who are under the age of 65, whereas the seniors health clinics, those referrals are typically people over 65.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yes. So
it's so important.
Absolutely. So the seniors health clinic is where the referral goes to. That's where you're going to see a specialist, a neurologist, or a geriatrician. And so those are Bridgeland, Seniors Health, South Health Campus, Bridgeland, South Health, and Rocky View. Typically, a person over the age of 65 will be sent to one of those three locations. Whereas if the person is under 65, typically they will be sent to a neurosurgeon. I say this enough, you think I would be able to get the words out. Neurosciences clinic. There we go.
That stumps me too sometimes.
You only say it a few times a day.
Right.
Right. So that referral is technically called a one-line referral. ONELINE, one-line referral.
Yes.
So just in case your GP is not aware of that, which of course happens sometimes, you can ask specifically for that referral, and you can even print that referral off of Alberta Health Services website and bring it in and ask the doctor to fill it out for you.
Yeah, great. And great advice. And I think too, on that form, on the one-line referral, we talked about this. I know when I first started, sometimes faxes get lost. It's nobody's fault. It's human error. So just taking down that phone number and connecting a couple weeks. Did you in fact receive my referral? I don't think there's any problems. I'm just saying that sometimes that happens. Always does. For the worst. Take down that number, and if you haven't heard anything, by all means, just reach out.
Absolutely, because sometimes the wait to see a specialist, as we all know, it can be several months. So I would hate that to have anybody wait several months without hearing anything just to come to find out that a referral wasn't even sent through, right? Because then you're going to have to wait another few months. So yeah, it's okay to call and check and make sure that that referral has in fact gone through.
Yeah, I'd give it a couple weeks though, at least 2, would you say?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
But then from there, it's working with the specialist to confirm a specific diagnosis.
And that appointment is typically long. Just be aware. I think they tell you ahead of time that bring your person. So the primary care person, if it's husband and wife, both go, because you're separated. So the person suspected of cognitive decline is asked a series of questions to get that diagnosis.
Mhm.
And the caregiver as well is asked a lot of questions as well, just to get that perspective. So
Right.
great opportunity. Again, bring that journal.
Yes. And be aware, the specialists know that people who you think are living with dementia can present really well, right? That's often a fear that I hear from caregivers is, no, they present really well. No one's going to believe me that there's changes. Doctors are very much aware of that, especially the specialists, right, that see this every day. So that's part of why you're going to be separated, right? So that you can address the concerns that you have and they can speak to the person privately.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So the other point.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we really do keep cutting each other off today. So just one other point that I'd like to make, because it's something I do hear about a lot, is it is pretty common for you to be discharged from the specialist after a diagnosis. Sometimes they'll do a follow-up in 6 months or a year, but typically speaking, I'm generally hearing that discharge occurs. So you don't see the specialist on an ongoing basis in most situations after diagnosis.
That doesn't mean to say that you can't see that specialist ever again. You just need to go through your GP again.
Right. And get that referral again. Yeah.
It's very well recognized in the healthcare system that it takes a village to support somebody living with dementia as well as their caregiver, right? Especially now. So yeah, definitely. We're hoping we can be part of that village, but there's other avenues out there that we can support. So that's best case scenario, right? What about worst case scenario?
Well, there might be
right.
There might be a few different worst case scenarios, and we certainly don't have time to address all of them. But again, that's what we're here for, right? If you know your process is not going to look like the one we just described, give us a call and we'll talk about all the possibilities and what your journey might look like. But in one of the what ifs is, what if my person lacks the insight? What if I've talked to them about the concerns I've seen? I point them out when they're happening and they have no interest in seeing a doctor.
Or defensive, or
yeah.
They don't want to know.
Yeah, don't want to know is a big one, right? You talked about the stigma that's around dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And as much as we're working to improve that, many people still have, we have a ways to go. Many people still have stigmas, and it's a really hard diagnosis to get. And sometimes people would rather just be ignorant to it, right? Which leads really well into the point that if a person has capacity, so if they haven't had a capacity assessment that says that they lack capacity to make decisions, then they are their own legal decision maker, right? And they can choose to live at risk, right? Which would include not getting treatment for not having medications, not getting diagnosis if they don't want to. So that's really important to note. That certainly doesn't mean you can't try and use some strategies and maybe a little persuasion to accomplish a diagnosis, but in some cases, people go without a diagnosis, right? In those situations, I would encourage at the very least that they're maintaining regular doctor visits, right? Because if something else is going on, we want to make sure that's being addressed, something treatable that is.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what can be common is a person has concerns about their person, cognitive changes or just changes, maybe in personality as well. You do have the right to contact that person's physician, but know that that physician cannot share with you. You can share with the physician. You can fax over the signs or the journal or have that one-on-one conversation, but no, it's just a one-way conversation. You're just giving the doctor information.
Right. Many times I'll hear, and again, this depends on the doctor, right? Sometimes some doctors are willing to meet with members of a patient's family, others are not. So it's circumstantial. But if you have a doctor who's willing to listen to you and hear your concerns, it may be trying to bring your person in under the guise of a physical, right? An annual appointment. And maybe from there they're saying, hey, at the age of 65, we start doing some cognitive testing, and they do it that way, right? That way it's kind of taking the focus off the cognitive decline, the possibility of dementia, and just putting the focus on something a little bit more general that most people would be a little bit more comfortable with.
Yeah, definitely. Even a simple call to make an appointment. So the nurse that you're talking to is who's taking the appointment, saying, I'm making the appointment for my husband. I want the doctor to know I have concerns about his cognition. Yeah. I know he's supposed to come in to renew his prescription for, high blood pressure pills or whatever. Yeah. Could you relay that to the doctor?
Yeah.
It'd be as simple as that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it just depends on the doctor and on what the care partner is willing and able to do as well.
I think it's key to know that as long as that person still has capacity, right, until they're assessed to be proven not to have capacity, we assume they have capacity.
Right.
So your strategy is going to look totally different if they're resistant to getting that diagnosis. So,
yeah,
and then
absolutely.
There's a whole plethora of strategies around that we don't have time to talk about.
No, but I think that's the main one, right? Is that hopefully if you can get the doctor on board with the concerns, then they'll be a really good ally in advocating for a diagnosis.
For sure. Yeah.
One other point before we wrap up is I just want to point out that your person doesn't need to have, a diagnosis from a geriatrician at Seniors Health Clinic to get home care, which would be respite services in, right? They don't just help people living with dementia. They do their own assessments to determine what the needs are. And you also don't need to have a diagnosis to move your person into a care home when and if that's necessary. I just point that out simply because it's probably those are the two main concerns. I hear caregivers really pushing for a diagnosis because they know they'll need one or two of those services. Yeah, just some reassurance that if you've tried everything you possibly can, you've worked with your doctor, you've called every resource possible, you've talked to us, used all our strategies, still no success. There's still resources for you to get help.
Absolutely. That being said though, there are resources out there that do require that diagnosis. Yeah. So just being aware of that, and we can help you walk through that, what that might look like as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is just a really great topic because it seems so simple, right? Going to get a diagnosis, and the reality is that it looks really different for everyone. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah. So we're always here if you want to talk a little bit more in depth about any of the concerns that you're having specifically, and feel free to ask us questions, and we'll do our best to respond in the chat. Yeah. Or the comment section rather.
For sure. So I guess that's a wrap. This is another big topic, Miranda? Like we could, yeah, you could see we're cutting each other off. We have so much to say. I think that's why we were chosen, because we're very chatty. But if you've been watching any of our Facebook lives, including those with Padma and the expert, dementia there's lots of dimensions to dementia.
Yeah.
Tongue twister, I won't say again. It's not black and white. It's not one size fits all. It's about strategies. We're lucky enough, though, I have to say, and very honored enough at the Alzheimer's Society, as what we do is talk to caregivers. And a lot of what we know is because of caregivers.
Yeah.
We're really not that smart. No, we are. No, we're not. That's a joke. But
it's a combination.
We learn a lot about our strategies, right? What has worked and what hasn't. So we like to hear those good news stories as well. So please post those.
Absolutely. And also on that thought, Cindy, if any caregivers watching or people who just have an interest in dementia for one reason or another, if there's any topics you'd like us to discuss, please feel free to leave those in the comments too. We're very open to talking about whatever is relevant for those of you who are watching.
Yes, please do that. Because the day will come where we're going to run out of things to say.
Might be a few days from now.
Maybe.
Several.
Maybe. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching, joining us today. Next week's topic will be self-care. So we're going to dive into that. Oh my goodness. For 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that's going to be tough. But please join us. Call to speak to one of our social workers one-on-one at 403-290-0110, or send an email to info@alzheimercalgary.ca, or chat live with Lindsay on our Facebook page, which is www.alzheimercalgary.ca. And if you like this video, like and share it. I understand we've had people from Portugal.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very cool. So technology is a crazy thing, eh? Well,
and that's what liking and sharing the video does. It means we can engage with people all over the world and hopefully share those strategies.
For sure. Take care, everyone. Until next week, enjoy the warm weather. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.